went into Dominica a couple of days ago, initially on a one-day visit in and out via the Venezuelan helicopter, but was asked to spend an extra day and a half in order to get a good assessment of what is happening in Dominica and in order to provide the Commission with some guidance on the most effective ways in which we can support the work being done there. He's just come back from Dominica, and the story that he has to tell is so compelling that we thought it ought to be shared with the media. So I invite Dr. Antoine to make, say something about his experience there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Director General, and it would be remiss of me not to begin this update, as it were, on the situation in Dominica from my perspective, as I witnessed it firsthand, not to acknowledge the support of the OECS Commission and the Director General, for the reason that were it not for the arrangements that were put in place quite early as first responders to the devastation in Dominica, by way of putting logistics arrangements and relief and rescue operations in place, it would not have been possible for me to get into Dominica. So I'm very grateful as Grenada's Commissioner to the OECS for the support that I got from the Commission in that regard. And it's important too to say that the Venezuelans responded to the call, and on my first day they wanted to ensure that I stayed with them to witness firsthand how they do their work. Certainly, perhaps as one of the opportunities for the OECS Commissioner, and certainly from someone from the Committee of Ambassadors from CARICOM to evidence how they do their work, I was able to accompany them in a number of search and rescue operations in Dominica on the first day. And the one that comes to mind, which will stay with me, is the way in which they rescued Trinidadian gentleman, his wife being Canadian, and his children from Castle Comfort. And their house was totally devastated from the hurricane, and they were virtually out in the open for the 2 days since the hurricane. And it was the support, of course, of the Venezuelan helicopter team, rescue team, and the medics, and of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard also had men on hand, but they rescued the family and took them back to the stadium. The Venezuelans administered medical attention to them and then reverted with them to St. Lucia. And that's just one case of the several, including injured people, that they airlifted and administered medical attention to. And I think we ought to very publicly say thank you to the government and the people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Regardless of what ideological perspective you come from, the level of service that they've given as first responders will stay with me for a very long time, and should stay with us all in the aftermath of the Dominican crisis. Now let me tell you that what I saw in Dominica, I was among the first responders in Grenada. In short, I went in on the reconnaissance aircraft after Ivan in Grenada, and that dreadful morning. And when I saw the condition in Grenada, I wept. In fact, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw in Grenada. When I saw the conditions on the ground in Dominica, from the very south of the island, and as I traversed virtually all of Dominica, from south to north, from east to west, we went into Pay Bush, we went into Portsmouth, we went over Marigot. As I saw the condition of virtually every single part of Dominica, words cannot describe. There are no adjectives yet created to describe the level of shock and horror that I felt. There are various descriptions given by many, as though a bomb was dropped, The one that comes closest are the sort of movie descriptions of the apocalypse. That is the one that comes closest. Let me tell you that there is virtually no community that's been left untouched. When you see 2 or 3 houses contiguously with their roofs on, forget the damage. You stop counting damage and you start looking for houses just with the roofs on. You breathe a sign of relief. Outside of that, there are communities for which every single house after house, have either disappeared. I did say disappeared, leaving the spot. There are houses that have been broken. There are houses that have been shifted off their foundations. There are houses that, even though the roofs are on, structurally they've been damaged. I said to the Director General and his team that I understand roofing and I understand the importance of the hurricane clips. But it's the first time I've seen where hurricane clips properly applied have actually led to the roof and everything to which it was affixed, including sidewalls, totally lifted off. In short, you're getting sidewalls lifted off with the hurricane clips and the roof in place. So powerful was this hurricane. Let me say to you too that the toll on human life is also something that left a mark with me, both in terms of the number of persons who've been affected, the shock that they felt, but also the way in which it has totally devastated life as the Dominicans know it. And I've spoken about the damage of houses. I now want to talk about the human cost. The human cost is that we have a tremendous challenge, and will have a tremendous challenge going forward, to get people to resume their normal lives. Though we have to push them in that direction, let us begin with education, that the schools have been damaged, substantially so. Let us talk about the health facilities. Those have been damaged. And you're now talking about a situation where prescriptions, where the equipment that Dominica would have amassed in district health centers, where the general hospital, all of those have been significantly damaged. And for communities, because we deal with things at a macro level, but really, there are communities which is where people live and work, and of course, those are important. The communities have been impacted because the district medical centers have been virtually destroyed. And the Director General asked me to stay an extra day. I was in the south of the island, which has been totally cut off, in a way that it is not going to be possible to resume any semblance of vehicular traffic anytime soon. It's not just cut off in terms of a roadblock, a landslide, but we're talking about chunks of roads that has just disappeared into the sea. I have pictures of where roads used to be that are now deep gorges. I mean, that really struck me. Bridges that have disappeared. The bridge to the Catholic Church, the bridge to the health center, bridges to farms, they've all gone. It's really a heart-wrenching scene to look at, having regard to the fact that Dominica had made so much infrastructure progress in the last several years. So there are communities that are now cut off, and they're going to have to resume some semblance of normal life by marine craft, which links them to the capital and to other communities. And of course, that brings with it the challenge of ports, little jetties perhaps, and with that would go things such as the need for life vest. I'm raising this because I think the life vest is also something that needs to be added on the list of critical needs. So there are communities, for instance, that are starting to resume some semblance, right, of contact with the rest of the island. And they're doing so by pirogues, by fishing boats, etc., which now we now need to look at the human security aspect of those things. But talking about the human tragedy, the impact on the elderly. The impact on the elderly is something we need to focus on. Dominica has the distinction, as is well known, of being one of the countries in the world with one of the oldest, the largest number of centenarians, and of course persons who are elderly. And they've been very terribly impacted. They've lost homes, they've lost medication, they've lost life and the way of life as they know it. They are vulnerable, and we need to find a way to look out for them. So what we did is that at the insistence of the Director General, I stayed and we mobilized the community and went around and actually got prescriptions for a number of these elderly persons, and the OECS is now putting together a shipment from the OECS pharmaceutical procurement program system, service, to actually cater to their needs. We're going to have to do more and more of this over time, so that Dominica really needs our support, is really what I want to say. And the importance of the community supporting them, the OECS community, cannot be overstated. The support in terms of agriculture, let me say a word on that. Agriculture in Dominica, as we know it, now ceases to exist. I'm not now talking about bananas. I'm talking about, let us begin by talking about trees and horticultural aspects of the ecosystem as we know it to be in Dominica, the nature island. Many of those have been destroyed. Let me repeat that. Most of those have been destroyed. There are palms, for instance, imperial palms that would have done the interior and the coastal areas in Dominica that would have withstood Hurricane David. And before that, several other natural disasters, catastrophes. They are gone, uprooted, broken in many instances. So if that is the case, you can well imagine the situation regarding agriculture. Mango trees, all of it gone. We're talking about breadfruit trees, all of the perennials we call them, limes as we know it, the coconut trees that we were just beginning to build, Dominica that is, a new industry around because of the global demand for coconuts. That's gone, sadly. So that for the first time, Dominica is going to be facing, for the foreseeable future, unfortunately, a level of food insecurity that it hasn't known before. And I think that is certainly something that we have to put before us, because our OECS community and our broader CARICOM family now has to get together with Dominica and talk about how we try very urgently to rehabilitate agriculture going forward. Let me tell you that the hurricane left nothing untouched. The root crops have been covered by alluvial material, stones and sand in a way that makes it indistinguishable. All of those things are now gone, and so agriculture both in the ground and on trees now ceases to exist. So, colleagues, really the importance of the press in getting this message out there, and the community, and in keeping it out there, cannot be understated. My last message: the community has to come together on at least 3 levels. This is the OECS community, the CARICOM community, and the global community. But there is no greater message than Dominicans, wherever they are, setting aside whatever differences may have existed before the hurricane, and coming together to confront this challenge as a united front, as one people. That's the intra. I call that the intra challenge. It's quite possible, but it's not just party. It's whatever differences would have existed before must be set aside. That's the lesson coming out of Grenada. Secondly, the inter between Dominica and the other countries. We have to come together like an OECS economic union in a way that is more rapid, because this calls for deeper, and this is not just lyrics, we say, the young people would say. This is really a very deep, entrenched understanding of what now needs to be done. There is a need for greater OECS union, not less. So the economic union becomes more important in all its dimensions. Yes? CARICOM. The broader CARICOM family now has to encircle Dominica, cover Dominica, and keep Dominica lifted up. Scriptural terms, but nothing better comes to mind, of course, than the story of David. And that is what we need to do. We need to cover Dominica, not in the short run only, because a lot of the assistance is not going to be there in a couple of months. But we have to keep Dominica constantly with us in our actions. And that solidarity that is touchy-feely, I did say touchy-feely because it's about people. That touchy-feely solidarity we have to ensure is sustained, and that's going to be very important. The international community. The Venezuelans have done yeoman service. We have Palestine, we have the European Union, we have the United States, we have Britain. Several other countries have played an important role. It's going to be important for us to have a special agenda on the reconstruction of Dominica. And of course, we can't forget that there are other countries that are not as badly affected, but which are significantly set back from what has happened too from the hurricanes this season. The Caribbean and the OECS is going to have a special approach, yes, which is going to be anchored in projects and programs and really very functional support for Dominica over the next several years. And really, again, the press is important because this is not to be a 7-day wonder. You have to keep this story, this message, this support up. You have to sustain that, right, for the next, at least for the next several years. And again, I want to say that the OECS Economic Union support, the Commission support in getting into Dominica was very important. My coordination with the OECS Commission while in Dominica, I met with the staff. We worked even in very difficult circumstances. The OECS had staff coming from Grande on the other side of the island. A lady walked from 5 in the morning to get to a 10 o'clock meeting through all kinds of obstacles to get to Roseau. That's the kind of sacrifice we're going to need to see going forward. The role of the OECS certainly on these matters have really stood out to my mind. And we need to applaud the work of the Secretariat. The Secretariat's work has only just begun. This is the OECS Commission Secretariat and the member states, because they have to participate in the damage assessment going forward, in the project preparation and writing, in the whole reconfiguration of our OECS system, both in terms of things like policies, building codes, economic policies to support a number of the infrastructure developments that's going to be required. Infrastructure not just in terms of soft, but hard. The OECS work has just begun. So again, I want to just place on record certainly our support, and to say that the support is not just logistics. What we're doing come the end of today is that we've put together the pharmaceuticals to supply the southern part of Dominica, predominantly old people, young children. And we want to keep that kind of support going forward. So I want to thank Dr. Jules for inviting me to the press conference. I want to thank Dr. Mitchell, who is of course the chairman of CARICOM and is the Prime Minister to whom I report directly. He is in Dominica today, and we spoke before. I did brief before I left Grenada. He asked me to do whatever I needed to support Dominica. His support as chairman of CARICOM remains, and I knew that also as chairman of the Small States Forum, which is a forum under the World Bank, he had previously put out a call for projects. And I know that now more than ever, our participation globally through things such as the Small States Forum and the OECS in one continuum where we build the projects and actually get these projects considered at the global forum is going to be more important than ever. This, my friends, is the way that we have to do business going forward. And again, it is for all these reasons that I want to thank the GG. But finally, to say that the Director General and the OECS Commission has always been also been very important in facilitating the support of the private sector. And we have two important private sector persons from Trinidad who themselves have really put together a tremendous package of support that's leaving Trinidad tomorrow. When I tell you tremendous, I mean absolutely tremendous. Chainsaws, generators, adapters, step-down transformers, water, food. A mega shipment is leaving, organized by the private sector. And the OECS Commission provided support for the, as it were, the interlocutor the head of this group to get into Dominica, do some work on the ground and continue feeding back to the private sector in Trinidad. And they have amassed themselves into a really impressive group of CEOs and operations persons, and really come up to mark in giving this support. And this support will leave Trinidad and Tobago on Thursday night for Dominica. Again, the OECS is playing the role in linking private sector support with the support that we have, and therefore the sum of the parts become greater than the whole. So I want to thank him for that as well, and to say that this is precisely the role for which the OECS and the OECS Economic Union was intended to play. And we are beginning to play that role. We're well on the way, and I fear that our work has just begun.
Thank you. Any question?
I think I just have one question. In speaking about Ivan, I remember going to school. There were students from Grenada who joined us. Any discussions have started in the education system?
Yes, well, the OECS Education Development Unit has been working with the ministries of education across the OECS to get from them ideas, configuration of the numbers of students that they can accommodate. Now, we're trying to handle this very sensitively, because you'd appreciate that the idea is not to take all students out of the country. It's very important that even with the devastation that Dominica has experienced, that we make every effort to get the school system back up and running as soon as possible. So the emphasis for us in the OECS is going to be on those students who are facing terminal exams, students preparing for CSEC, for CAPE, the pre-university students, like the community college students, to get that grouping out so that the education at this critical stage is uninterrupted. But for the rest of the students, except on if families make their own arrangements and so on, but as a group, as a population, we are working with the various ministries of education, as well as a global fund. There's a global fund in education which we are part of, to help do the rehabilitation. In fact, it's interesting that last year we ran a seminar, and that was facilitated also through Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, and the chairman at the time, Ms. Fortuna Anthony Husbands. We ran a seminar on disaster preparedness for schools, and the lessons of that, I think, have certainly come to roost in this experience.
Any words from the moment?
Well, just an update from yesterday.
Sorry.
Name of the education?
Maria Mida, Acting Communications Manager, NEMO. An update from yesterday is that we've actually confirmed that 5 containers actually left St. Lucia yesterday. We have no confirmation that they have actually gotten to Dominica as yet. But this was done in collaboration with MNCs, who facilitated the whole shipment process, free of freight charges through the Geese line. Okay, but in the meantime, we are continuing to receive donations and contributions from the public and from business places.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There is